Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to a brand new episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend. Hello, movies. Hello, movies. Hello, movies. My old friend.
That's right, everyone. We are back. This is week 4 of March, and that means our Hello Movies episode. I'm really excited about this one, but before we jump into it, Rob, tell everybody what we're going to try and do here today.
Absolutely. On Hello Movies, My Old Friend, you and I go back and rewatch old classics that we loved as a child or, high school. High school is kind of the cutoff. And movies we have really fond memories of, but for whatever reason, they've just kind of fallen along the wayside, and we just haven't seen them, and we want to see if they can still hold up.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, high school is a very long time ago now. So
You're not supposed to say that.
So this, so us looking back at things we watched in high school is hard to remember, and we really find that we don't remember some of these movies as well as we thought because we don't like them as much.
That's true. We do not have the greatest of records here on Hello Movies, and there could be a lot of reasons for that. I think it could be taste changes.
Sure.
It could be just maybe taste changes. Maybe they were never as good as we thought
yeah,
they were.
we just were young and didn't and just appreciated it for who knows why.
Exactly, but
we thought it was cooler.
We have found some gems though.
We're on it, yes, and so we've been done pretty good this year. We like Doc Holliday.
Hollywood.
Doc Hollywood.
I love
Doc Holliday. I'd love to see him fight Doc Hollywood.
Oh, that's not even a fair fight.
No.
I'm your Huckleberry.
But anyway,
we're digging way back on this one though.
Yes, we are.
This is not. It's in high school. It's not middle school. This is definitely elementary school, and it was kind of a crazy out of left field pick because I didn't even think this movie was streaming anywhere anymore.
Yeah, we have a list of Hello movies that we are trying to knock out, and this movie jumped onto the list really quickly because we didn't think of it till very recently.
Absolutely,
we've been thinking of this list for a couple years now, so the fact that we keep finding new ones to put on there is cool. But this one was able to kind of cut the line. Yes, we are watching 1988 Young Einstein.
That's right, written, produced, directed, and starring Yahoo Serious.
Serious.
We're gonna do that a lot.
Yeah,
I can already
too
tell.
Cool.
But kind of pulling an Orson Welles here.
Yeah.
Kind of doing all the things for this movie. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Young Einstein, he plays a fictionalized version of Albert Einstein, who is Australian.
Yeah.
Which is not accurate in any way. In fact, it alters all the places, the people, and the circumstances of his life.
Yeah. So it's one of those movies that say not based on true events. That's this whole movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's I know there's a part of it where he is in a relationship with Marie Curie.
Yeah.
Which is totally not a thing, and he split some kind of an beer atom. I remember him running with the beer and the foam or something. And there's a lot of this movie I don't remember.
Right, I just kind of remember visuals right now in my head. Not a lot of plot. I do I know music is big. He invents a guitar, rock and roll, something.
Maybe invents the electric guitar. That might be part of it. I remember there's a part when he's in one of those big farmhouse metal tubs for outdoor bathing.
Yeah,
and there's just there's
you're
right a lot of flashes of visuals, but I do remember loving this movie as a kid, and I really am excited to find out why.
Me too, but I will say I do have some fear that there's not gonna be any reason to have liked it.
As always, there is that. But it's what we do here, and Yahoo Serious. He feels like such a flash in the pan because it was he did this. He did another movie called Reckless Kelly, which I remember watching. So that was another one that could go.
I did. And
then I think he was in a movie in the early 2000s called Mr. Accident or something like that. I never, now that one I never watched, but I remember him being in it. I think we had it at Blockbuster when I worked there, but I never watched it. So he's not it's not like he became a very prolific actor in any way, shape, or form. So I'm just, maybe that's not a good sign.
This didn't this didn't launch his career.
Carrot Top.
Yeah.
Carrot Top did some movies and then stopped.
Thank you, Carrot Top, for that. So we're gonna have to find out if Yahoo Serious did us a disservice by stopping.
Yeah, that's what I'm hopeful. I've got my fingers crossed that it was more just an underappreciated classic classic, so I'm very excited to check this movie out.
Yeah, I think this movie could be fun. It can be goofy. I hope it's weird. I just want it to be weird, not
Right?
bland. I want them to really
Just
reach
go
for some
it.
stuff
Swing
and
for
go
the
for that.
fences, Yahoo. With a name like Yahoo Serious, how can you not?
Absolutely. And so let's do it,
We're
Rob.
gonna
Let's
swing for
watch
the
the movie.
fences.
Let's
Yep.
see what happens. So if you guys haven't seen Young Einstein in a long time, like me and Rob, or ever, pause the podcast, go check it out. When you're done watching it, come back and then listen to what me and Rob have to say about Young Einstein and see if this movie still holds up.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, Rob, we are back. We've gone from Tasmania to the bush to some other parts of Australia and back in our recording studio.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I really want to go to Australia.
Oh, lifelong dream.
It is. It's a
They
lifelong
could
dream.
find a way to make the flight shorter,
Just it's too long.
Very doable.
It's too long of a flight.
or at least go to New Zealand, see some, can knock out some Lord of the
Kiwi
Rings
or an Aussie,
stuff.
exactly.
Let's go to the outback.
Tasmania. Gotta go to Tasmania. See a Tasmanian devil.
Was Lion in Tasmania the movie we watched in season 1? I think parts of that took place in Tasmania. I think that's where he got moved to. So this would be the second time Tasmania has popped up
That's
for
funny.
Car Ray Rob. I
That is
believe
funny.
that to be the case.
Interesting. Yeah, but this is a very different kind of movie.
Very,
than
very
Lion.
different.
Very different.
You aren't lying about that.
You aren't. I'm not lying.
And
Yeah.
this movie at its core is a Yahoo Serious movie.
Yeah, like it's so interesting to me. Like it's a funny because it's a movie that it doesn't surprise me that it is written, produced, directed, and starring Yahoo Serious because like I just feel like it embodies him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As
Yeah.
a person, as a character, like this movie is a vehicle only for him, and probably would only be made by him.
I can see that. Yeah, there's I do feel like there's some parts of the movie where I'm like, all right, there's no restraint because this person has all the control in the movie.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing,
No.
It's so but you can tell it's like this is this guy's like it's his piece and he's doing what he wants to it and it's going to be him and you gotta respect that for the most part.
Yeah. So let's tackle maybe the biggest elephant in the room that I think if anybody watches the trailer, watches
Kangaroo.
the movie,
Can we say kangaroo?
There you go. The biggest kangaroo in the room, and that is just. I mean, obviously, this movie is completely not even remotely historically accurate.
What?
You didn't know that?
I
You didn't
mean,
know that Einstein wasn't.
I didn't know what
Australian?
Einstein's life was like before E equals MC squared.
There you go.
But it wasn't this.
You didn't realize he wasn't Australian.
I mean, I knew he had an accent.
There you go. And everybody with an accent sounds like they're from Australia.
Just really
Jeez,
annoying.
Ray.
Yeah.
God, no. So yeah, but I would think, to anybody who told me that, like they come up to me and they're like, oh, I don't know why they make that movie. They make, it's just not historically accurate at all. It just seems very weird. Like my argument to that clearly has to be that I think Yahoo Serious wanted to make a statement about Einstein, not a biopic about Einstein.
Sure.
And just about being an outcast,
just being
general.
different. Yeah, I think it's just and Einstein is kind of very famous for like, yes, he was the genius that this physics genius, but he also like couldn't do math. So he's like very famous for like both ends of the spectrum. You can be great at one thing and not great at all things. Like he's a great representative of that mindset.
Right.
And so Yahoo Serious is just kind of running away with that idea that he is so different.
Right.
Which is smart. I agree.
Yeah, and kind of bringing in some of these other people that you can kind of maybe not consider them contemporaries as their orbits in life are, but contemporaries as far as what they did in life. So like bringing Marie Curie into it. Obviously, Albert Einstein and Marie Curie were never a thing.
Right.
Like they weren't an item romantically.
Right.
And so it's
bringing in Mr. Aspirin.
Right, bringing in Mr. Aspirin. But it's still kind of going to that broader idea of the outcast and people who, were seen as almost like rebels because
Mm-hmm.
she was a woman in science at the turn of the last century. Like
Right.
that's just unheard of. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like this is not a thing. And then Albert Einstein kind of doing the same thing where people maybe disregarded him because he was kind of weird and
Yeah.
kind of clearly on the spectrum and things like that. So I think that kind of stuff you just got to let go of.
Right.
If you're going to watch this movie, you got to realize you're not watching a biopic in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And just go along for the ride.
Yeah, and I think that's freeing in some ways too. Like,
it is.
And I know we had kind of said like, something about inventing beer or something. We were kind of remember that, and I could not remember like, well, I know he doesn't invent beer because beer's been around forever, so I didn't really remember exactly how it fit until they started talking about inventing or putting bubbles in beer. Then I was like, oh yeah. Okay, now I'm back on track.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that idea because obviously they didn't invent that either.
Right.
Or Einstein didn't invent that either, but I think it was a fun little twist to kind of put into it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a lot of things about Einstein, and I think some of it was kind of like a way to. Obviously, there were things that he didn't invent that they kind of like, he didn't invent the electric guitar.
No.
You know what I mean? But it was like, it was kind of a thing where it was like, okay, I'm going to take these more like scientific theories that, your average person, maybe doesn't understand on a daily basis. I'm going to kind of put them to these fun visual things that representations that people will understand.
Right.
It's a beer atom. Okay, whatever. Like go with it. You know what I mean?
Crack it with a chisel.
Right. Crack it with exactly, which is funny. Like, and I think that's the thing is like kind of mining that stuff for comedy as well was also part of those, liberties he took with reality.
Yeah. You know what? One of the liberties I thought was kind of fun, and I guess if I was going to make a critique, like some of the things I thought like maybe tonally he kind of bounced a little bit. Yahoo Serious, that is, because one of the things that I thought was funny was like, you can play with his naivete, to a point, and like him going to the like basically living in the brothel, the hotel brothel, was kind of funny. But what I really thought was funny is how like the other residents of the brothel, the ladies were like, and the owner and the manager were like getting smarter, like just being around him. Like I loved how they were questioning reality and physics by the end of the movie and like be able to predict some things. Like I really liked, so I like that really adult like kind of twist on something that probably I did not catch when I was younger.
Sure.
But then the movie like then bounces and does some really cheap like more childish jokes too at the same time, and I get trying to appear to the whole audience, but I'm like, man, I wonder if I would have liked the movie if it was more one and not the other, or one or the other and not
like
both.
If it took itself more seriously,
not more serious, but like just a more adults aimed at like jokes, like the brothel and that kind of stuff. Maybe I guess maybe a darker comedy of sorts instead of some of the more playful comedy that it infused as well.
I guess I could see what you're saying. Like I do agree that there are some interesting tonal shifts throughout the movie a bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I do think it kind of like dips into a darker comedy element, especially like when he gets to the asylum and stuff like that. But I do think some of that comes down to like an Australian sense of humor, and I think it again I do think it works, like to a certain degree. Obviously it's not like it's not pitch perfect by any stretch, but I do think he is able to kind of flow between these different styles of comedy in a pretty effortless way. It's just the stakes feel lower at times than other times, and I think maybe that kind of takes some of the weight out of it.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, like I said, I'm not here to over criticize the movie that we loved when we were kids and stuff. And like I said, it's still pretty fun, but it's definitely weird. Like I'm definitely at times purposefully weird and stuff.
Yeah.
But I kind of just wrote like I think a lot of the jokes that don't work for me just feel too like I wrote like Acme cartoonish. Like. Sure. I don't know, like I like the idea of him blowing up and stuff, and then him being pitch black, whatever. Like when he comes out of it. But and like I mentioned, like some of the sound effects are like straight like cartoonish sound effects, and like the putting on your pants falling out of a window thing. I'm like all this stuff is like it's kind of low bar.
It is, but my read on that is because he's and I really hit me when like he and Marie Curie finally decide like to go out on a date, and he dresses up, slicks his hair back and all that, and he gets out there in his like suit. He looks like Chaplin. So I feel like there's a lot of this movie that is an homage to like Buster Keaton, to Charlie Chaplin, to that kind of slapstick silent era comedy. And I think that's why it feels so weird, because those types of things are, they exist in a silent era for very specific reasons, because everything had to be kind of bigger
Right.
and overacted because there was no sound. So I think that there's some of that comes through in Yahoo Serious's performance in this movie. But, like I said, I don't necessarily think it doesn't work, but I can see where you might feel like it feels out of place.
Yeah, say maybe it tries. I think maybe it's trying for me, trying for that, and I don't know
Right.
if it always hits it or not. Because like even in that scene, like you think about like when he's waiting for her, he just starts dancing, and there's like a 2-minute segment of him dancing while he's.
Right.
I'm like, what are we doing right now?
There could
Like,
be a little bit
let's
of
go.
filler, yeah, and there's a little bit of filler.
Yeah.
I think about like when he travels to the mainland from home.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm definitely going to circle back to this about just how much of this movie
Right.
it kind of hit me as I'm watching it. It's another movie that so many visuals I remembered even just before I saw them. Like, oh, I know what's coming next. Oh, I know what's coming next, and things like that, and stuff that just like resonated with me when I was a kid. And that part of that scene definitely did, because I remember him like
that montage.
Yeah, that montage when he's in the desert and he's kind of standing there with his compass, and they do the kind of like time lapse frame jump thing. Like, I totally remember that. It almost felt like a music video to me.
Right.
And there's some parts of the movie that do feel like a music video to me.
For sure.
But that's a sequence that maybe didn't need to be as long as it was.
It might just be the editing process. Like maybe it's just too long, hung on some scenes just a hair too long. But again, the guy that he's got all that control, and you're figuring it out the first couple, the first time you're really doing it. So you got to be able to forgive some of those flaws.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, there's a lot of that stuff that I did remember. I remember we mentioned the bathtub, like the tub, like where he's like in like the, I guess it's an undersized tub before he goes to the mainland when he's taking a bath or whatever. He's got like the dishes in
his
there,
parents' land.
Right? Yeah, and he's like playing the violin. He's like, I'm working on a new kind of music, and it's like, which is obviously I remembered like becomes like rock and roll or whatever, or roll and rock.
Roll and rock
is what he ultimately landed on.
I remember the hopscotch down the alley. Like I remember the alley just kind of triggered me like visually, that I remember seeing him in this setting before.
Yeah. But it's always interesting to me how much movies like this that we watch when we're young ingrain themselves into your psyche.
Yeah.
So like the mental asylum scene, I remembered a lot of, like when he first gets there and he's in the straitjacket and they're all kind of walking around that room.
Yeah.
And like I totally remembered that. Like, and I think it's like there's a lot of interesting stuff in those almost oddball moments that I still think really do work, and I think that it's kind of like small glimmers of genius that are in this movie. And then I think of like the kitten pie, which is again, it's like screenwriting 101. You want to make somebody save the animal, so they put a bunch of kittens in a pie. So I mean, not that you wouldn't have already liked Albert Einstein by that point anyway, but that clearly seals the deal for you when he's saving kittens from a pie.
But when he is running away, that crust looks immaculate. I'm like,
It
all
really
right, I
does.
don't support eating this cat, but the pie looks really good right now. I'm going to admit it.
Right. But what about you? What are some of the stuff that you remember?
Well, one thing that I think I really figured out watching this movie, because there was a lot of movie I'm like, man, I'm not remembering as much as maybe I thought. But then I would see a section of it, and I'm like, but I remember this visually. And what I'm convinced happened is, I'm convinced that there was a trailer for this on one of the VHSs that I watched all the time. And I was seeing those flashes from the trailer that I would, it was just too hard to fast forward through those back in the day. So you just watched all those trailers, and so I felt like I'm like, what I really remember about this is the trailer. I think I just saw the trailer so many times.
Yeah.
So just a lot of those visual cues, like the alleyway and some of the stuff, like him in a little tub, like you said, like just the hair when it's like really pointy, or when it's just the different incarnations of his hair. That stuff like really triggered for me, I felt like.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I didn't really remember, like I didn't really remember the villains. Like I didn't really feel like I remembered
I didn't
Preston.
really remember Preston either. Yeah.
Yeah. Or kind of where that like the whole like the atomic bomb part. Like I remember him playing the guitar clearly. That's like I think on the probably on the VHS is a picture
Yeah.
of him with the holding the guitar, but I couldn't remember necessarily that he was like draining the nuclear power of energy.
Right.
I couldn't, like, that stuff didn't come to me.
Well, it's funny because I don't remember. I definitely at the moment didn't remember, like before we watched it, the atomic bomb part, but I did remember the him playing the guitar part because I remembered the aftermath, like when he turns red and
Yeah.
then like he's all ashes,
Yeah.
like after, and like his feet and like boots are all like crumbled and ashy and all of that. Like I totally remembered that part, and I definitely remember that stuff. Like even after he blew up the barn, splitting the beer at him, and he was completely covered, head to toe black, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like definitely remembered those moments as well. So obviously, I mentioned it earlier. One of the key crux of this movie is his relationship with Marie Curie.
Yeah.
Obviously, purely fictitious.
Sure.
But I still really love that intro scene where they meet on the train.
Mm-hmm.
And I did remember a little bit of that too, like when he gets on the train, like after he's making the journey and he's got the lizard in his pocket and all of that. And I think there is a great chemistry between those two characters that does kick off pretty well in that scene. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think the scene does a decent job too, of just like really introducing Preston as being insufferable.
Yes, for sure.
For whatever that length of time is before Einstein enters the train cabin.
Yeah.
And then once he enters, there's that just really good like contradiction of the two, where like he's not simple-minded, but just such a more regular guy.
Yeah.
Or he can almost like turn off the like having to impress all the time and trying to be super smart. Like that's one thing Einstein in this movie, he doesn't ever try to be super smart. He just kind of is and stumbles onto it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he's not like Preston where he's just insufferable. So I like that contradiction there, and then seeing the then back and forth with him and Mary is nice.
Yeah. And I think, as their relationship blooms through the movie, because she takes to him right away. Like, it's not a thing where she also looks down on him the way that Preston does.
Right.
So I think that that's also something that's nice through the rest of the movie, where she always seems to be an advocate for him.
Oh, for sure.
And it also becomes detrimental at one point because Preston clearly is like glommed onto Marie, and then he takes from her suggestion that whatever Albert is doing is important as a signal that he needs to steal what he's doing.
Yeah. And he sees them hanging out together, so he wants to disrupt them.
Right, exactly.
Or ruin Albert.
Yeah, exactly. So, I appreciated that because, again, it's that misfits that come together. Even though she's not necessarily seen as a misfit, because she won the 1903 Nobel Prize, like she's, obviously seen as being extremely smart and, a genius and, has been accepted into this university and, all of these things. But as I said earlier, like she's still kind of a rebel for her
she's
time.
A woman at that time, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, having that relationship form quickly and they become kind of like a bulwark for each other, I think is a big plus for me as far as this movie goes.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to kind of do the love story. Obviously, you want to see her be taken away from Preston.
Right.
You want to see Albert kind of succeed there and stuff. And like I said, when they kind of go on their dates, Albert's really charming and stuff. Like they kind of play him as aloof, but he's not like he understands what he wants to. It's not like he doesn't understand like his feelings toward Marie or that they're being reciprocated or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I really like the prison break when she goes there to rescue him.
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea of she put it on the beer to get in and stuff. And
right.
Then you get to kind of actually see her intelligence in play because you don't really get to see her like invent anything or really display, her strengths in that way. So you kind of get to see a little bit at the end when she's about to save Albert, and then she ends up leaving him there because, but she inspires him as she exits because, she wants him to be more of a man of action.
Right. Yeah. Which, and I will say, like, I don't know. That is one element of the movie, like that. Like as far as like, and again, like this is an adult me looking at this movie. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, it's like I don't think about these things necessarily.
Of
but
course.
but as an adult me and as a writer of sorts, I look at this and I think, does that feel forced? Why wouldn't he want to stop? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like like the being the man of action. You know what I mean? Like I guess
he's always been inventing. He's always kind of doing things. So
it's like why wouldn't he want to take action in this moment? It almost feels almost a bit like drama for drama's sake, like trying to force a weakness in need revelation on him. But ultimately it works, and he
Sure.
gets to where he needs to be. But on a side note, real quick, while we're on the again kind of talking about this asylum sequence, and they were interacting with her as well, is the group of people around her. You mentioned Mr. Aspirin,
Yeah.
and like Keenly. He ends up
Yeah.
calling him Keenly,
Yeah.
because he's like, and those are kind of just goes back to those.
There are
kind
other
of words.
people. There are other famous people, but I can't remember what they're all famous for. Like Mr. Rutherford, I know is a big psychiatrist,
Right.
But I don't remember.
So they kind of get all of these people in that were kind of seen as, again, as outcasts and rebels or whatever at that time. But like, it's funny because I think about Keenly and like those word jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of goes back to like what I feel like the kind of comedy we were talking about earlier, like that Chaplin-esque kind of comedy. Because obviously, once Chaplin started doing talkies, like that kind of stuff integrated into his comedic style. You know what I mean? It almost became verbal slapstick, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that Yahoo Serious did a pretty good job of getting that in this movie as well. Considering he, obviously it's a talkie, so he didn't have to worry about just the visual. But yeah, I think it made that group also pretty endearing.
Yeah.
For the short amount that they're in the movie.
Right. Yeah. And almost. You kind of end up feeling like they're in the movie more than they are, and I almost maybe wish they were. I do kind of wish maybe the third act could be a little bit bigger, but I think that's just like how we're used to watching movies nowadays,
sure,
as compared to what how they would be made back then.
Mm-hmm.
Where he could like bring this group with him, everybody have a part in how to take down Preston, and then the plane goes off, without a hitch, kind of thing. That'd be more the by the numbers way to do it here, where or to do it now, where here in this movie that Albert goes off by himself and we kind of lose the group. But I did like that dynamic. I kind of liked the shift of when he went to the hospital, because he was kind of floundering, I think, just in downtown,
right?
A little bit, and he gets to the mainland, he's trying to figure things out, like how's he going to make money, how's he going to get some of this stuff patented, and turn some of his theories into actual products and stuff. So I feel like he's just barely, maybe the movie starts to meander a little bit, and then he gets sent to the asylum, and I think it picks up pace to the end again.
Yeah, because once he escapes and ends up making his way to Marie,
like finding a hot air balloon,
right? Like gets to her house and then finds out that or gets to her house in Australia or whatever, realizes she's not there, and then he's got to get to France or whatever.
I do not know how long a hot air balloon to France would take. I do not think it's the fastest travel method,
right? But it's funny just because this idea of him having to be the kind of the gallant man in this moment. So it's funny when he like walks in, and going back to what I said earlier about as far as Marie Curie goes, being a woman in science at this point, Albert's dad doesn't want him to be a scientist. He wants him to work the apple fields. Marie's father doesn't want her to be a scientist. He wants she needs a man, not a test tube.
Right.
So like it's interesting that they both kind of are are fighting the same kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it's great when Albert kind of has to storm into the room and be the man of action, and he says, "I'm a Tasmanian." Like, just that line is just like so funny to me. I don't know why, and I feel like that is in the trailer too. That strikes me as something that I feel like I remember being in the trailer for this movie.
Certainly could have been. I don't know if he really has a plan, though. You know what I mean? Because remember, he gets there and he's like there to save the day, but he does. I'm like, bro, you just probably were in this hot air balloon for had to be weeks. I mean, it had to be weeks. So you had to have a plan when you landed to turn off.
He took a hot air balloon from
her house in France. Yeah, you're right.
He didn't take the hot air balloon from Australia to France.
You're right.
I don't really know how he got to France.
Yeah, I guess that's where I lost. How he got to France, but anyway, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. No.
But yeah. So he has to, when he's there, he has to figure out how to stop the nuclear weapon. He's like, oh, I'll do it through guitar,
right?
Which is funny. He puts on a concert, and the guitar is shooting out electric sparks. Like the nuclear power is gonna be a little bit more sparky than that, but
right. Oh man, I'm telling you. So you got Marconi, like radioing this all out. So you get him in there as well. But then you over the wireless, you've got the group of guys from the asylum that are listening to this happen, and he turns his guitar to 4/4 time, and he's like playing, and they're all like, "It's 4/4 time. That'll drain the power out of anything." And like as a musician, I'm just like, that's hilarious. Like that has nothing to do with anything. Like I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
yeah. It kind of had this like Back to the Future type vibes where I was like, "You guys got to listen to this."
Right.
And then he's playing his nuclear guitar.
Yeah. but but then he ends up like absorbing too much energy,
Yeah.
and then he like turns into the guitar player from Mudvayne for a quick second for an interview like new metal from the turn of the 2000. But yeah, and then he'd explode. It drains the power, but kind of
Yeah.
explodes himself, and it's a good comedic moment, and it's something I definitely remembered as a kid.
Yeah, the hair being all spiky, and
Yeah.
again we see him pitch black. I was trying to remember. I'm like, I remember him being all black, but I'm remembering it from the first time when the shed blows up, which is what I think, or that he was also pitch black at the end. I was like, all right, you can go blackface once in a movie, but you really shouldn't do it twice.
Whoa, that's fair.
Yeah, but it was electrifying. He was electrifying.
Exactly. He was burnt up.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we said, this isn't a biopic.
No.
But and one thing I always hate about biopics is when you watch a biopic about a character and it's like all they want to do is show you like everything that you know about this person happened in this 3-day period.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is how they got their hair. This is how they got their gun. This, whatever. You know what I mean? Like
We're talking about Solo right now.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. But there's other movies that do it too. So
Yeah.
I'm not just picking on Solo. But they kind of do that with this in
Sure.
a way where but again, not being a biopic, like
Yeah.
does that matter?
I think so, because it's like we're not like creating canon here,
Right.
You know what
Okay.
I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's supposed to be silly. That part is supposed to be silly. So I kind of found it fun when he was like discovering gravity and discovering for every
Right.
action there's an equal and opposite reaction and relativity and
Right.
I kind of like and rock and roll and music and stuff. So I had fun with that kind of stuff too. And I
Yeah.
think that's to me where the movie like really worked the most, like seeing Einstein's genius.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, no, I can agree. And kind of watching that journey, coming from nothing, being out in
Yeah.
the bush or whatever, and his dad. Like I like you said earlier, like I liked all the stuff with his dad.
Yeah.
And like you said, the apples, and like discovering gravity or what goes up must come down and all
Yeah.
that stuff. All the kind of the big stunt pieces. There's a lot of big stunt
Yeah.
pieces in this movie for what you would imagine this movie to be, which I thought was pretty cool. One moment that just sticks out to my head and I love it is like when they're at the valley and the dad's like, I want you to dam up this valley. And he's like, you want me to dam it up? That'll kill all the animals. He's like, yep, in one go. And he's like, Dad, I'm a pacifist. And I just thought that was great. And I just wanted to go. I did myself dabble in pacifism once. Not Nom, of course, but like.
Which I watched Lebowski this week, so that's
Did
crazy.
you?
I
There you go. But but again, it kind of like fills out that character
Yeah.
of Einstein, which and I think that's kind of one of the most interesting things about this movie. And we are what, a year or two removed from Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
and like Einstein's in Oppenheimer.
Oh sure.
Because like about as far as like his contributions to what became obviously the atomic bomb, and like that's what happens in this movie. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, it's
like,
funny that
right. So it's like it's taking this extremely serious subject matter from his life, but and like turning it into something that it's funny. But and it's not a detraction from it that knowing the real life consequences of Einstein's
Yeah.
work, even on himself, what he felt about his work and how in some ways he regretted some of his
sure.
work because of what ultimately became of it. But being a pacifist and all, but it's just I think they did a pretty good job, like you said, of like taking all of those moments and making them fun and still being able to say the truth, like really the truth about Einstein.
Yeah.
And just in a more comical way.
Right, yeah. I don't think you lose this. Like I said, it's completely non-autobiographical. Nothing of it is even trying to actually be Einstein, but it is, I think, still getting his spirit.
Yeah.
The spirit of what he wanted to represent. So I think that's still there, and that's kind of like what grounds the movie and gives it its heart.
Right. Well, and they even had that little quote, like at the end, like he was a rebel, he was a pacifist,
Right.
he was all these things, and I think that's what Yahoo Serious was really trying to do. He's kind of like making an ode to the man, to the and to who he truly was at the core,
Yeah.
and maybe even. We talked a lot about legend in our last episode of Say Hello when we were talking about Puss in Boots. Like,
Sure.
obviously Einstein is a legend,
Yeah.
and there's certain myth that's built around him. And, I think a movie like this did a good job of like kind of taking that and turning it on its head a little bit while still keeping those core values in place, again, making, at least attempting to make a fun movie. Because if there's one thing you got to give young Einstein, it's that it knows what it wants to be, and it's its own movie, and it's unapologetic about it.
Definitely. Yahoo Serious knew what he was trying to do, and I feel like this movie is, like you said, unapologetically Yahoo Serious.
Yeah.
And so, to that, for him, he had to think of it as a victory, I think, because he did accomplish that goal for sure.
Absolutely.
So we usually try to wrap these episodes up,
Yeah.
kind of telling us how did we think it held up
Yeah.
in our minds, would we come back to it, all that kind of stuff. So do you want to just take the floor, and do you think this movie held up? A lot of times when we do this show, they do not.
That's true. We've had a pretty spotty record, and so this is gonna be a long-winded answer, at least a little bit, because I just said it's a movie that's unapologetic. It knows what it wants to be, and I have a lot of respect for that. I always have a lot of respect for a movie that's just swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
It's not afraid to be weird. Dare to be stupid, man. Weird Al, come on. Just and like willing to put itself out there, and it doesn't necessarily always work.
Yeah.
And I mean, not because you just do that doesn't mean that it's going to work, but the courage that it takes to do that, I think, is something that really you get some credit for.
Mm-hmm.
So for a movie like this, is it a good movie? No.
Right.
But is it a fun movie? Hell yeah. I'm gonna say I actually had a lot of fun watching Young Einstein. Like, yeah, this isn't a movie that critics are gonna fawn all over. It's a movie that critics aren't necessarily going to understand. And you know what? I could see a guy like Yahoo Serious being like, that's fine. Like, if it's not a critical success, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I think like fans,
he didn't make it for them.
Right. It's a movie that's made for people that are willing to give it the chance. And to see kind of those interesting little nuances that he put in the movie. But that doesn't mean it's successful across the board by any stretch. So, like, from a conventional sense, no, this isn't a good movie. It's just, it's too much at times. Like you said, it kind of meanders a little bit from here and there. Some of the comedy gets a little too much, and then there's a little, kind of muddled with what's happening. But I think overall, like, it's a really fun movie, and I understand why some people, like, really call this a cult classic.
Yeah.
But what about you? That's my opinion. We got to get yours.
Yeah, I think I fall somewhere in pretty much very close to what you're saying. Like, again, like, did I watch the movie, like, right now? I'm like, yeah, it's not a great movie, but I do remember and still see what young me,
Definitely.
why young me
That's
liked
a big
it,
point.
why
Yep,
I had
absolutely.
fun watching it. So I didn't have as much fun watching it now as I did then. Like, again, I respect the feat. I respect the vision. I really like the idea of what, like we just explained, what Yahoo Serious was doing with that ode to Einstein. Not using Einstein as like a character model, but not using Einstein as like strictly who he was as the main character. Like, I kind of appreciate all that stuff. Maybe the script could have used another pass, maybe another set of eyes could have just helped it a little bit. But this is his thing.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for that. That's so hard to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, I think I get why Kid Me liked it. I'm glad I got to watch it again to kind of remind myself of some of those things I forgot. Again, like you said, is it a great movie? Not really. But if you kind of look back at this movie fondly, go check it out one more time. It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Rob, well, we are wrapping up this great conversation on young Einstein, but I just had a thought. An apple has just struck my brain.
That must have.
I was hoping you were going to pick that up for me. That's a hook quote, everybody. But what that thought was that if you've not already liked this podcast out there in listener land, you need to do that. Do that for us. That would really help us out. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so, and leave us a 5-star review if you can. If you do, we'll read it live on air someday. Don't forget, you guys can email us at carrayrob@gmail.com or reach out to us on Blue Sky at carrayrob.
Absolutely. You can now follow us now on Instagram and Facebook. Go and do that and see all the great stuff we're doing over there. If there is a comment section on whatever platform you are on, by all means, let us know what you thought of Young Einstein. And I want to know what your favorite Yahoo Serious movie is. There's only 3 of them, so you don't have a lot to choose from, but I want to know which one it is. We will be back next week with our very special Kids Edition episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, where Mr. Kitty Kaiju will be back in studio, and we are going to be showing him the absolute masterpiece parody, Spaceballs, by the great Mel Brooks.
Best Mel Brooks movie?
Ooh, that's a tough call.
I'm
not debating that with you right now, but yes. Then we will be back in 2 weeks with our regular scheduled my episode of Say Hello to my little film. I've got something very special for Ray. I think I'm not going to say that because I don't know if you're going to like this movie.
One
or
of
not.
those.
It's definitely going to be one of those. And then after that, the week after, we will be back with a next month's episode of A Copy of a Copy, where Ray and I are going to be watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I love westerns.
Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I know. It's going to be a very interesting episode. I have seen both movies. You have only seen one.
Yes.
So we're back to that. So I think that's going to be a great conversation. But next month, we will be back with a great episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where Ray and I are going to be watching the 1993 crime thriller directed by Clint Eastwood, A Perfect World.
Yes, I am looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's another one that kind of came on our radar relatively recently, and we decided to kind of skip the line on it and bring it up. But, Kevin Costner, Laura Dern, a lot of great people in this movie, so I'm super excited to revisit it. But you are not going to want to miss it. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate. Hello, movies. Hello, movies. Hello, movies. My